The corridor stretched endlessly, a rib cage of steel and flickering light. Talia moved slowly through its forgotten length, one hand pressed protectively to the curve of her belly, the other brushing the cold wall to steady herself. The child shifted inside her, restless under the hum of the station's failing power grids. Her skin, pale emerald laced with faint silver undertones, glowed softly in the shadows, a lantern in exile. At 50 years, she had been deemed unfit to carry. Life, her people declaring her pregnancy a disgrace, an indulgence too costly to Vidian society. Yet here she was, heart-hammering, lungs tight with fatigue, clinging to the pulse of the unborn, as if it alone tethered her to existence. On Vidia, they had stripped her citizenship bracelet from her wrist, as if tearing away her very name. Reproductive. Codes, they called it, the same laws recited with solemnity in council chambers. First conception only between 30 and 40, no exceptions. Too soon meant recklessness. Too late meant selfishness. They told her tradition preserved stability. But Talia knew better. The codes were chains of control, forged by those who benefited most. When Counselor Renix, the man she had once trusted, took a younger partner for political advantage, her late pregnancy had become a liability. Exile was a convenient erasure. The outpost's administrators had done their duty and nothing more. She was given a ration card, a bare cot in an abandoned maintenance closet, and the cold assurance that minimal accommodation fulfilled interspecies law. No one asked how a Vidian body handled pregnancy differently. No one cared that the child, pressed against her spine, demanded more than gray nutrient paste. Hunger gnawed at her constantly, made sharper by the knowledge that she was not just starving herself, but the life within her. Tonight, the ration packs had run dry. She walked the quiet corridors, because sitting in her narrow room with the emptiness, clawing at her, was unbearable. The emergency lights above her flickered like dying fireflies, shadows stretching and collapsing across her path. Her golden eyes burned with unshed tears, but she refused to let them fall. Dignity was all she had left, and she clung to it even as her knees threatened to buckle. A sharp cramp lanced through her abdomen, sudden enough to drag a cry from her throat. She pressed against the wall, teeth gritted, breathing ragged. No, little one," she whispered, rubbing small circles over her belly. "I'm trying." For once her voice broke, and the sobs came, quiet and raw, echoing faintly against steel. Alone in exile, she finally allowed grief to show its teeth. "Hey, are you all right?" The voice startled her, deep and human, cutting through the silence like a shockwave. Talia's head snapped up. A figure stood a few paces away, broad-shouldered, khaki worksuit stained with engine oil. His boots carried the scuffs of long labor, his sandy hair cropped short but untidy around the edges. The stubble on his jaw caught the low light, and his eyes, tired, lined, but alive, studied her with open concern. She straightened instantly, wiping at her face, ashamed to be caught weeping. "I'm fine," she said, though her voice was rough. He took a cautious step forward, as though approaching something fragile that might bolt. "You don't look fine. No offense." The bluntness struck her like a jolt. On Vidia, such words would have been an insult worthy of censure. Here, it felt strangely honest, no false courtesy, no political maneuver. Just truth. Her lips pressed together, unmanaging. His gaze shifted briefly to her belly, then back to her eyes. There was no judgment there, no calculation, only concern. He extended a hand, fingers roughened by calluses. "John Callahan, Station Maintenance." For a moment, she hesitated. Vidians did not share names so easily, did not touch without permission. But she was not on Vidia anymore. Slowly, she placed her emerald hand in his. His skin was startlingly warm against hers, grounding. "Talia," she said, When's the last time you ate, Talia? The question hit harder than she expected. This morning, she lied, voice steady but her stomach betraying her with a hollow twist. His brow rose, skepticism plain. I just finished a double shift. Was heading back to grab some food. He paused, considering her carefully. I'm not exactly rolling in credits, but I've got enough to share a meal. If you want, her breath caught. Offers always came with expectations among her people. Nothing was free. Yet his expression stayed open, unguarded, as if the idea of tricking her had never crossed his mind. Why would you help me? She asked, searching for the catch. You don't know me. John shrugged, a simple gesture that carried more kindness than any Vidian courtesy ever had. Because you look like you could use a friend. And honestly, so could I. The station gets lonely. Another ripple of pain passed through her, the child pressing hard against her ribs. John's eyes flicked to her discomfort, and his voice gentled. Look, no pressure, but my place is just down that corridor. Real food, not ration packs. And a chair that won't break your back. He smiled, a small tired thing that somehow reached his eyes. Talia stared at him, torn between suspicion and an ache so deep it bordered on surrender. What did she have to lose? Her people had already taken everything. She nodded once Dot as they walked side by side through the dim corridor. His hand brushed lightly against her elbow when they passed through a patch of darkness. The simple human touch nearly undid her again. For the first time in months, something flickered in her chest. That was not despair. It wasn't hope not yet, but it was the beginning of something that might one day grow into it. John's quarters were tucked into the station's maintenance wing, a modest unit carved out of the same dull metal corridors as everything else on Outpost Nexus. Yet the moment the door slid open, Talia felt the difference. The air was warmer here, faintly scented with something earthy rather than sterile. A worn leather chair sat by the wall, a shelf crammed with actual books-thick paper tomes, their spines cracked from use, and small green plants thrived in mismatched pots. It was a space lived in, cared for. A space that carried traces of a person rather than the emptiness of exile. It's not much, John said, running a hand through his sandy hair with a sheepish gesture. But it's home. Take the chair. Trust me, it's better than whatever the station stuck you with. Talia lowered herself carefully into the chair, surprised at how the cushions yielded beneath her. A sigh slipped out before she could stop. It's warm. She hadn't meant to say it aloud, but the words carried a truth she couldn't deny. John offered a small smile, then moved to a compact cooking area in the corner. He pulled open a refrigeration unit and began setting. Ingredients on the counter: pasta, canned sauce, synthetic protein cutlets. Hope you like pasta, he said, filling a pot with water. It's about the only thing I can make that won't poison someone. Human comfort food. Simple, but it does the job. I'm not familiar with it, Talia admitted, watching with cautious curiosity. Simple carbs, John said, flashing her a grin over his shoulder. But damn satisfying after a long day. Any Vidian dietary restrictions I should know about? The question startled her. On Vidia, no one asked outsiders what they could or couldn't eat. Accommodating others was unnecessary, even wasteful. No citrus, she said after a moment. It makes our skin react badly. No lemon in the sauce, John confirmed, with a nod, as though it were the most natural thing in the world to adjust a meal for her sake. He set the pot on a small burner, the hiss and bubble of boiling water filling the room with a homely rhythm. Talia found herself watching him closely. The way his hands moved with quiet efficiency, the way his shoulders relaxed as he stirred the sauce, even the faint whistle he made under his breath. It all felt so ordinary, so far from the isolation she had endured. Ordinary, she realized, with a pang, could feel miraculous. Your people, John said after a pause. 50 is considered old for a first pregnancy? Her body tensed instinctively. On video, such questions would be an intrusion, a violation of privacy. But John's tone carried no judgment, only curiosity. Yes, she said slowly. The ideal window is 30 to 40. Anything later is considered selfish. Selfish? He turned, one eyebrow arched. How so? Resources, Talia explained, unconsciously stroking her belly. Our society is built on efficiency. Older parents require more support, diverting resources from other families. At least, that is the official stance. And the unofficial one? She hesitated. Speaking openly about Vidian politics was taboo. But what more could they do to her now? She met his eyes. Control. The reproductive codes keep people obedient. Break them, and you lose everything. John drained the pasta, his expression thoughtful. Humans tried rules like that a few times in history. Never stuck. We're too damn stubborn. Is that why you spread so quickly through the galaxy? Talia asked, genuinely curious despite herself. Stubbornness? That and curiosity, John replied, grinning as he plated the food. We're like cosmic cockroaches, impossible to get rid of. The self-deprecating humor startled a laugh from her, an actual laugh. It burst out, raw and unfamiliar after. Months of silence, and she covered her mouth as if she had broken some law. Yet it felt good, startlingly good. John slid a plate into her hands. The aroma rose up immediately, rich, savory, layered with spice. She took a tentative bite. Flavors exploded across her tongue, vivid and warm in a way her ration packs had never been. For a moment, her eyes stung with tears. Good? John asked, watching her reaction. Extraordinary, she admitted softly. They ate in companionable silence for a time, the quiet punctuated only by the clink of forks against plates. For Talia, each bite was more than sustenance. It was a reminder of what she had been denied, simple comfort, shared without condition. So, John said at last, his voice gentle but probing, "What's your plan? For when the baby comes?" The question sobered her instantly. She set down her fork, her appetite faltering. "I don't have one. The administrators made it clear they consider me temporary, despite my exile being permanent. I have nowhere else to go." John frowned, leaning back in his chair. "That's not right. You can't raise a kid in a storage closet." "I don't have many options," she said, voice low. "Vidian exiles are unwelcome everywhere. No one wants the diplomatic trouble. Humans aren't most people," John replied firmly. "We've got colonies that would." A sharp knock at the door cut him off. Both froze. Visitors were rare here. John stood, checked the security display, and his expression darkened. Station security. And a guest. The door slid open to reveal two figures. A human security officer shifting uneasily, and behind him, a tall Vidian male draped in elaborate formal attire. His emerald skin gleamed darker than Talia's, traced with silver markings denoting high status. His eyes locked on her belly with cold disdain. Talia's blood turned to ice. "Ambassador." "Kelvin," she whispered. The ambassador inclined his head with calculated poise. "Citizen Talia," he said smoothly. "Or rather, former citizen." What an unexpected pleasure. John stepped subtly between them, his posture protective. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" The room's warmth drained away, replaced with a tension, sharp enough to cut. For Talia, the meal's fleeting peace shattered like glass. The shadow of her people had found her, and whatever kindness she had discovered here was about to be tested. The moment the door sealed behind Ambassador Kelvin, the warmth of John's quarters seemed to vanish with it. Talia sat frozen in the chair, hands trembling over her belly, her golden eyes wide and unfocused. The pasta on her plate cooled untouched, the scent suddenly bitter in her nose. John moved first. He shut down the security display, muttering a curse under his breath before crouching in front of her. "You know him?" Her throat felt tight, but she forced the word out. "Yes," her voice cracked. "He's Renix's rival. One of the most dangerous men on Vidya." John studied her face, reading the fear she could not mask. "And he just shows up here in the middle of dinner." He exhaled slowly, anger simmering just beneath his calm tone. "That's no coincidence." Talia swallowed hard. "Kelvin doesn't move without reason. If he's here, then Renix sent word. They know." Her hand pressed harder against her belly, protective, desperate. "They know about him." John's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "Then we don't give them what they want." She almost laughed, but the sound that escaped was closer to a sob. "You don't understand? In Vidian tradition, a pregnancy like mine is shameful. But politically?" Her gaze darkened. "It's dangerous. Renix would rather see us both dead than let his career burn for it." The words hung between them, heavy as iron. John's hand closed over hers, grounding her. "Then we don't let that happen." Before she could respond, a sharp pain knifed through her abdomen. She gasped, doubling forward in the chair. Her vision blurred with sudden tears. John was at her side in an instant, steadying her, his voice urgent, but not panicked. "Talia, talk to me. What's happening?" Her words broke as another wave of pain tore through her. "Too soon. It's too early. Medical," John said immediately. "We're going." "No." She gripped his arm with surprising strength. "Vidian pregnancies aren't like yours. Human doctors." She broke off with a groan, clutching her belly. John shook his head. "They'll know more than I do, and a hell of a lot more than that ambassador." He helped her to her feet, one arm firm around her shoulders. "We're going." The walk through the maintenance corridors blurred into a haze of pain and shadow. Talia clung to him, each step a battle. By the time they reached the medical bay, sweat beaded her emerald skin. Her breath coming in shallow gasps. The night shift doctor, a rumpled human named Elliot, looked up from his console. His eyes widened as John half carried her inside. "What in John?" "Get her on the table." Privacy screens hummed to life, sealing them in. Elliot's scanner swept over Talia's swollen belly, the device chiming with sharp warnings. His expression grew grim. "There's a biochemical imbalance. I'm reading elevated levels of... I don't recognize this compound." "Noctilium," Talia whispered, her voice strained. "It's a stress hormone. My body..." She broke off with another cry. "It thinks I'm under threat. It's forcing the pregnancy to end early." Elliot's face tightened. "If this keeps up, the baby won't survive. Neither will you." John's grip on her hand tightened. "Fix it." "I can't without protocols," Elliot said, frustration lacing his tone. "Vidian medicine is locked behind restricted databases. I don't have access." The words hit Talia like a knife. She closed her eyes, despair washing over her. Everything after Exile, after loneliness, it would end here, in a sterile room under failing lights. John's voice cut through her thoughts, hard and certain. "Who does have access?" "Diplomatic clearance," Elliot said reluctantly. "High-ranking officials, ambassadors." John's eyes narrowed. "Kelvin." Talia's head snapped toward him. "No, he would never help me. He came here, too. See me gone." "Then he doesn't need to know he's helping," John replied, a reckless fire sparking in his eyes. Elliot straightened, realizing what John intended. "You're talking about hacking his credentials? That's insane." John's lips curved into a grim smile. Good thing I'm not Vidian, then. Doc, keep her stable. Give me a few hours. Talia tried to shake her head, but the movement made her vision swim. You'll be caught. If Kelvin discovers, John squeezed her hand gently. He won't. I know this station better than anyone. I've patched every broken conduit, crawled every duct. If there's a way in, I'll find it. Her eyes filled with tears, this time not from pain, but from the sheer madness of his determination. Why? You don't even know me. John leaned. Close, his voice low and steady. Because you deserve better than this. Because no one should face it alone. Before she could answer, he released her hand and turned to Elliot. Keep her alive. I'll bring back what you need. Then he was gone, leaving Talia trembling on the table, her heart caught between fear and something dangerously like hope. Elliot adjusted the scanner, preparing an injection to dull her pain. You know, he said lightly, though his eyes were serious. John's always had a thing for lost causes. I am not, lost cause, Talia managed weakly, the unfamiliar phrase stumbling off her tongue. The doctor's smile was kind. No, but you are in distress, and that's enough for him. As the medication cooled her blood and the pain eased slightly, Talia let her eyes drift shut. Against all logic, against all law, she clung to one thought, that a human's reckless. Kindness might yet save them both. The maintenance corridors of Outpost Nexus had been John Callahan's world for years. He knew every conduit, every faulty junction box, every shortcut that let him cut half an hour off a repair shift. Tonight, that knowledge became his weapon. The glow strips along the ceiling hummed faintly as he moved in silence, tools slung. Over one shoulder, a portable terminal in his hand. He kept his pace steady, never rushed. A man walking with purpose in these tunnels looked like he belonged station. Security rarely questioned someone who carried a wrench and grease stains. His destination loomed ahead, the service ducts adjacent to the diplomatic wing. Beyond the wall, Ambassador Kelvin would be settled in his opulent guest quarters, complete with a secure terminal linked directly to the Vidian diplomatic network. John didn't need to confront the ambassador. He just needed to get close enough to borrow his clearance. He slid open a hatch and ducked into a narrow crawl space. The air smelled of dust and old wiring. He wedged himself into position against the thin wall, activated his terminal, and jacked into a neglected relay. The ancient metal hummed under his hands, the interface spitting static before resolving into a trickle of data. His pulse quickened. He was inside. Then he heard voices. John froze, heart hammering. The ductwork carried sound too well. Kelvin's voice came through clear, cultured, and cold. The female's child must not be born. John's stomach turned to ice. Another voice answered, clipped and deferential. Counselor Renix was explicit. Exposure would destroy him. And so, Kelvin continued smoothly, we terminate the pregnancy. Officially, it will be recorded as a medical failure. Tragic, but procedural. The female can be returned to Vidia for rehabilitation. She won't survive the process, of course, but her death will be convenient. John's jaw clenched so hard. It ached. He pressed his fist against the wall, fighting the urge to burst in and break Kelvin's perfect nose. He forced himself to breathe. Anger could wait. He needed the protocols first. He returned his focus to the terminal, hands moving with controlled precision. Years of patching outdated systems had taught him how to slip through cracks others ignored. The Vidian database unfolded in crisp hierarchies, every file labeled and cross-referenced with maddening efficiency. He scrolled past trade treaties and fleet reports until there, medical protocols, Vidian reproductive emergencies. He copied the entire directory onto his portable drive, his breath caught between relief and fury. But the conversation beyond the wall still burned in his ears. This wasn't just exile, wasn't just punishment. It was calculated murder. Talia's death, and the unborn child's erased to protect. Renix's spotless record. John disconnected, sealed the relay, and slid back into the corridor. He moved faster now, adrenaline pushing his legs. Each step echoed with Kelvin's words, "The child must not be born." When he finally burst into the medical bay, Dr. Elliot looked up from his console, relief washing over his tired face. Talia lay on the bed, pale but conscious, her hands curled protectively around her belly. "Tell me you got it," Elliot said. John tossed the drive onto the counter. "Everything you need, but that's not all," he explained quickly, every word clipped and urgent. Talia's golden eyes widened as the truth sank in, horror and sorrow mingling on her face. "Renix," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I should have known he would never let this stand." John crouched beside her, his hand covering hers. "Listen to me. We're not staying. Not here. Not with them hunting you. Once Elliot stabilizes you, we're leaving this station." Dr. Elliot turned sharply. "That's madness. She's barely stable as it is. Moving her now is safer than letting Kelvin decide when to finish the job." John cut in. "We'll get her out. I've got a plan." Talia stared at him, torn between fear and something dangerously like hope. "You'd give up everything. Your work, your home." John met her gaze, steady and unflinching. "Some things are worth fighting for." The room fell into tense silence. Elliot inserted the drive into his console, protocols scrolling across the screen. At last, he exhaled. "This will help. But you've just painted a target on all of U.S." John nodded grimly. "Then it's time to move fast. Because Kelvin won't wait forever." The corridors of Outpost Nexus pulsed with warning lights, crimson flares that bled against steel walls as John half-dragged, half-guided Talia through. A maintenance shaft. Her arm was slung across his shoulders, her breath shallow but determined. Behind them, the echoes of boots and the low crackle of combs carried through the ducts. Kelvin's men were already sweeping the maintenance sector. Duncan's voice rasped through John's cum unit, clipped and urgent. "They're searching your quarters. I've got eyes on at least 2 Vidian security and a couple of station officers. They're not subtle." "No reason to be," John muttered, tightening his grip around Talia's waist as they shuffled down a narrow stairwell. "They think she's cornered." Talia stumbled, catching herself against the railing. "We can't outrun them like this." Her voice was taut with both fear and frustration. "Not in my condition?" "You let me worry about that," John sighed, though his own pulse hammered like a warning bell. The stairwell opened into a vast cargo bay, stacked high with metal containers and humming with dormant loading cranes. The red emergency lights flickered, bathing everything in restless shadows. John pulled Talia behind a column, just as a pair of Vidian officers entered through the far hatch, sleek rifles glinting. Talia's hand tightened around his forearm. "They'll smell us." He'd forgotten the Vidian's acute olfactory sense, honed through centuries of evolutionary advantage. "Hiding was temporary at best. Then we improvise," John whispered. Nearby, an automated cargo transporter hummed in standby. Mode: a flat platform built to ferry heavy crates along magnetic tracks. John's eyes lit with reckless inspiration. "Get on," he whispered, guiding Talia toward it. Her golden eyes widened. "That thing? It's not designed for." "Neither are we." John cut her off, already prying open the override panel. His fingers flew across the controls, rerouting the transporter's destination. "Strap in." "Sort of." The transporter lurched as power surged into its system, then accelerated with a metallic whine. Talia clung to John's arm as the platform rocketed along its track, weaving between towering stacks of cargo. Shouts erupted behind him. 2 Vidians sprinted after them, their boots striking sparks on the deck. Within seconds, they had commandeered another transporter. Sleek bodies hunched forward as the chase began. "They're gaining," Talia warned, her voice sharp with panic. "Not for long," John said, grinning recklessly as he pulled his maintenance override from his belt. He aimed it at a junction box they shot past. A burst of sparks cascaded, the system's safety protocols collapsing. The pursuing transporter screamed as its speed tripled uncontrollably. The Vidians shouted in alarm before the platform careened off the track, smashing into a wall of containers. With a deafening crash, metal crumpled, crates toppled, and the air filled with the hiss of ruptured hydraulics. "Human ingenuity?" John said breathlessly, glancing at Talia. Her eyes glimmered in the red light, torn between terror and awe. "You're insane." Frequently, he admitted, the transporter screeched to a halt at the bay's far exit. John leapt off first, steadying Talia as she stepped down. Ahead, the corridor curved toward Dock 12, where Duncan waited. But the sound of boots and shouted orders was growing louder, echoing down every passage. They pushed forward, weaving through crates and machinery, John's hand at the small of her back, urging her on. Her steps faltered, her body protesting, but her will carried her forward. The docking bay came into view, chaos painted across its surface. Duncan crouched behind a fuel canister, exchanging fire with station officers. The maintenance shuttle loomed on its pad, engine spooling, ramp extended, a miracle barely holding together. "Duncan!" John bellowed. Duncan looked up, relief flashing across his grease-streaked face. He hurled a small device toward the advancing security team. The grenade exploded in a blinding flash, thick smoke rolling across the bay. "Now!" John shouted, pulling Talia into the cover of the smoke. Energy pulses hissed past them, searing the air. The ramp loomed ahead like salvation, but each step felt endless. Talia's breath ragged, her hand clutching her belly. They stumbled up the ramp just as the smoke thinned and Kelvin himself stepped into the bay, his silhouette sharp against the red emergency glow. His voice cut across the chaos, cold and commanding. "Stop them!" John spun, hauling Talia up the last few steps as Duncan fired blindly down the ramp. The shuttle shuddered as its clamps released, then roared as its engine surged to life. The ramp clanged shut, sealing them inside. John pulled Talia into a crash seat, strapping her in just as the shuttle bucked violently. Duncan's voice roared from the cockpit. "Hang on to something. This isn't going to be pretty." The shuttle launched like a stone from a sling, alarms wailing instantly. The bulkheads rattled, systems shrieked warnings, and the stars outside spun wildly as they hurtled into open space. Talia clutched John's hand, her golden eyes wide with terror, and something fiercer underneath. "We're not free yet." John squeezed back, his jaw set against the roar of engines. "No," he said, "but we're alive. And that's a start." The shuttle bucked and groaned, as if it were trying to shake itself apart. Warning klaxons blared from every console, bathing the cramped cabin in a hellish red light. Talia clung to the crash harness, her knuckles white, her other hand pressed hard against her belly. Each vibration rattled through her body, and with every jolt, the child within stirred restlessly. "They're on us." Duncan shouted from the cockpit, his hands a blur over the controls. 2 Vidian pursuit craft, closing fast. John strapped himself into the co-pilot's chair, jaw tight. The sensors painted a grim picture, 2 sleek ships slicing through space with the precision of predators. Their shuttle, patched together from spare parts and stubbornness, was no match in speed or firepower. Options? John demanded. None. Duncan growled. "We can't outrun them." And shields won't take a direct hit. John scanned the navigation display, searching desperately for something, anything. Then he saw the shifting cluster of jagged signatures just ahead. Asteroid field, he said. Hastis's belt. Duncan's head snapped toward him. You're insane. That place chews up mining barges, let alone a maintenance crate held together by duct tape. John's gaze didn't waver. Their ships are too valuable to risk in there. They'll hesitate. We won't. A sharp cry cut through their argument. Talia doubled over in her seat, sweat beading across her emerald skin. John? Her voice was ragged, her golden eyes wide with fear. It's starting. Too soon. John unbuckled, moving to her side, ignoring the lurch of the shuttle. Stay with me. He grabbed the portable scanner Dr. Elliot had pressed into his hands before their escape. The readings flickered across the display her noctilium levels. We're spiking again, her body pushing into labor. Duncan, get us into that field, John barked, his voice tight. Buy us time. Duncan swore but obeyed, throwing the shuttle into a wild dive. Outside the viewport, titanic hunks of rock loomed, spinning silently through the void. The shuttle threaded into their chaotic dance, hull plating screaming as debris scraped past. Talia gasped, clutching John's hand. On Vidia, births are solitary. No witnesses, no help. She bit back a cry, her body racked by another contraction. John squeezed her hand tighter. Well, you're not on Vidia anymore. You've got me. The shuttle jolted violently, pitching him forward. He shielded her with his body as sparks rained from an overhead panel. Duncan's voice shouted from the cockpit. We lost the starboard thruster. She's flying like a drunk brawler. John forced himself to focus. He pulled out the emergency kit, grabbing the stabilizer injection Elliot had given him. This will help, but it won't stop the birth, he said. His voice was calm, though his hands shook. Talia's grip tightened. Why? Her words came out in gasps, but her eyes locked on his. Why risk yourself? You've known me for 2 days. John hesitated, then bent closer, his voice steady even as the shuttle rattled around them. Because where I come from, we measure humanity not by how we treat our equals, but by how we protect those who need us. My mother survived because someone took that risk for her. I'm just passing it forward. A shudder passed through Talia that had nothing to do with the turbulence. Her golden eyes filled with tears, but she nodded weakly. The shuttle plunged deeper into the asteroid belt, Duncan weaving them through narrow gaps that no sane pilot would attempt. The pursuit craft hung back, unwilling to follow as closely, their weapons' fire glancing uselessly off drifting boulders. Then, through the chaos, a shape emerged, a dark, angular structure clinging to the side of a massive asteroid. Duncan's voice cracked with relief. PX-117, abandoned mining outpost. Landing pad still there. Do it, John urged. The shuttle came in hot, slamming onto the pad with bone-jarring force. Metal shrieked against metal before the craft skidded to a halt. Silence followed, broken only by the hiss of escaping steam and the thin whine of stressed engines. John unbuckled, lifting Talia into his arms. Her body was shaking, her breath shallow, but her gaze was fierce. It's coming, she whispered. He carried her down the ramp into the dim interior of the outpost. Dust coated every surface, the walls lit only by emergency strips flickering to life as the generators kicked in. Duncan hauled the portable transmitter toward the control room. Already setting up to call the RTEM, John laid Talia down on a couch in the common area, brushing damp silver hair from her face. Outside, the hiss of another shuttle descending echoed through the thin atmosphere. The Vidians had followed. Talia clutched his hand with surprising strength. If something happens, promise me you'll protect him. John's jaw set, his other hand tightening around hers. "Nothing's happening to you. Or to him. Not while I'm here." The pounding on the outpost's airlock doors began, metallic and relentless. Duncan's shout carried from the control room. "The Artemis is 20 minutes out. We just have to hold." Another contraction seized Talia, her cry raw in the stale air. John braced himself, rolling up his sleeves, the sonic disruptor heavy at his belt. He was a mechanic, not a doctor, but in this moment, none of that mattered. The Vidians were cutting. Through the outer door, Talia was in labor. And John Callahan, human stubborn to the core, was ready to face both at once. The control room door buckled inward with a shriek of tearing steel, sparks showering the floor as plasma cutters finished their work. The pounding that had echoed through the outpost fell silent, replaced by Kelvin's smooth, commanding voice. "Former citizen Talia," he called through the comb. "This is your final opportunity. The child you carry belongs to the Vidian. State, surrender now, and I may see that your passing is handled mercifully." On the couch of emergency blankets, Talia arched with another contraction, her cry echoing through the chamber. Sweat beaded across her emerald skin, her silver hair plastered to her temples. John knelt at her side, his hand firm in hers, his other guiding the fragile new life into the world. His voice was low, steady, a lifeline. "You're doing fine. Just one more push, Talia. You've got this." A door gave way with a crash, metal slamming to the floor. Vidian security officers stepped through, weapons raised, their emerald skin glinting in the red emergency lights. Behind them, Ambassador Kelvin entered, his posture regal, his expression sharp with disdain. Then the child's cry cut through the room, thin and insistent, piercing the silence like a blade. John lifted the newborn into the dim light, the tiny body slick and trembling, skin a softer shade of emerald than his mother's. Silver markings traced delicate patterns across his brow, heritage marks of high blood, unmistakable even in infancy. Golden eyes blinked open for the first time, mirroring Talia's. Talia reached out with trembling arms, cradling her son to her chest. "Illurin," she whispered, the name trembling with equal parts grief and wonder. Kelvin froze, the color draining from his face as he recognized the markings. His voice dropped, low and venomous. "The child of Counselor Renix, born in filth. This cannot be allowed." He raised his hand. "Seize them." John was already on his feet, planting himself between Talia and the advancing guards. His sonic disruptor hummed in his grip, set to a frequency that would scramble neural pathways. "The child stays with his mother," he said evenly. "You'll go through me first." Kelvin's smile was cold, human sentimentality. "Do you think your defiance means anything under Vidian law?" Before John could answer, the entire outpost shuddered. A new voice boomed through the comm system, crisp and commanding. "This is Captain Hayes of the UES Artemis. Ambassador Kelvin, stand down. Your unauthorized operation is over." Every Vidian head turned toward the ceiling as the ground trembled with the thunder of human marines breaching the outer corridors. Armored figures swept into the chamber, rifles trained on Kelvin's forces. At their head, the Marine commander raised a gaunted fist. "You're welcome to accompany us aboard the Artemis, Ambassador. Our diplomats are eager to hear your explanation." Kelvin's face twisted with fury. "This is a Vidian internal matter. Not anymore." Another voice interrupted, crackling from the Marine commander's comm. A face appeared on the small display, a Vidian elder with silver markings framing her features, the High Council insignia unmistakable. High Counselor Marina herself. Kelvin's composure cracked, his head bowing instinctively. "High Counselor, enough." Marina said, her tone like iron. "We have received proof of Counselor Renix's hypocrisy, exposed by your unauthorized zeal. His downfall is inevitable. As for the female and her child, her eyes softened slightly as they fixed on Talia and the tiny infant in her arms. They are granted protection. The exile is rescinded. Talia's breath caught. For the first time since her exile, she dared to believe her people's laws might bend. "And if I choose not to return?" she asked, her voice steady, though her body trembled with exhaustion. "That is your choice," Marina replied. "Perhaps it is time we reconsidered our rigid traditions." Kelvin sputtered in protest, but the Marines closed in, seizing him and his guards with efficient precision. John finally lowered the disruptor, turning back to Talia. Her golden eyes shone as she pressed Ilurin close, relief breaking across her features like dawn. Later, aboard the Artemis, medical teams swarmed around Talia and her newborn, ensuring their stability. John stood nearby, grime and blood streaked across his arms, but his expression softer than she had ever seen it. Captain Hayes clasped his shoulder. "When I said I owed you, Callahan, I didn't expect you to call it in like this." John chuckled wearily. Go big or go home, right? 6 months later, on the twin-sunned plains of New Terra, John stood on the porch of a modest prefab house. Inside, he heard Talia's gentle voice singing a lullaby, human and Vidian melodies woven together. Ilurin cooed softly, the child's heritage markings gleaming faintly in the fading light. Duncan sat beside him on the porch, sipping a synthesized beer. "Mail came," he said, handing over a data chip. John scanned the message and let out a low whistle. They did it. A council changed the code. First pregnancies allowed up to 60 now. "Small step," Duncan said. "Big enough," John replied, pocketing the chip as Talia appeared in the doorway. Her silver hair was shorter now, her clothing a blend of Vidian and human styles, her golden eyes luminous in the sunset. Ilurin rested peacefully in her arms. "Good news?" she asked. John wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Change is coming, slowly, but it's coming." As the three of them stood together, the baby stirred, his tiny hand reaching out to grasp John's finger with surprising strength. John's throat tightened. He remembered the first moment in that dim corridor, when he had simply offered dinner to a stranger. Sometimes, he thought, the smallest kindness could rewrite the laws of an empire.